You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Special little announcement from our friends at the Vet Show Group. They've actually set up a promo code for all of our listeners. If you're thinking about going to Chicago Vet, that happens mid-May, use promo code TALKA2 to save $75 off your entrance. And with that, Ivan, would you go ahead and get us started?
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm excited to introduce a friend of mine, Paul Diaz. Paul is a Marine Corps veteran, a recruiting industry expert with over 21 years of experience, the leading advocate for ending the veterinary non-compete, and the founder and CEO of Offer First, a revolutionary new recruiting technology that will forever change the way employers and candidates engage. In the last corporate position, Paul was the vice president of veterinary recruiting for one of the nation's largest veterinary employers. He led his team to over 1,100 veterinarians hired in 2 years. After leaving that position 3 years ago, he immediately began working on Offer First and launched his staffing and consulting company, High Power Consulting, to serve as a platform to test his new patent pending recruiting process called Offer First, which will launch this spring. Paul, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Thank you for having me, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you have quite an innovative way to revolutionize and change how the recruitment was done or is done or will be done with your new approach. Can you tell us what is the radical difference, how it was done in the past, and what are you doing different?
So I give it away in the name, right? Offer First. Basically, what we do with this technology is we ensure that the employer's value and the candidate's value align as the first step. And the reason I did that is because after 21 years in the recruiting industry, I've learned that offer declines are probably it's the worst experience for both parties, right? Both parties invest a significant amount of time into this screening process, and then we get to the very end of it, and that's where we start talking about values. And if an employer makes an offer and the candidate determines that, hey, you know what, that doesn't align with the professional value that I place on myself, and they decline it, well, both those parties have to start over again, right? The candidate finds another employer, the employer finds another candidate, and they use the same process, and they go through that over and over until they find a place and a person who will accept that offer. So with Offer First, I decided that I didn't have the luxury of risking that much time. So we created this process to enable both parties to determine upfront, hey, you know what? Our values do align. Now let's get into the screening and determine if we're a fit.
That makes tons of sense, Paul. So, I know a little bit about your previous company, the time that you spent there, and the work that you're doing now. And I really want to kind of dig into the why. I understand, it's kind of a failed process and you think you can revolutionize it. But why did you stumble upon this? And how do you think that revolution is going to take place?
Well, there's a couple reasons why. First of all, as that third-party recruiter, as that agency recruiter, I only get paid if that offer is accepted, right? So I act as that middleman between the employer and the candidate. I manage that relationship all the way through the end of that process. And if the employer lowballs that candidate, the candidate declines, they both get to start over, but I'm the one who's left, holding an empty bag. So that was a risk that I just didn't want to assume. The other thing is that, the traditional hiring process, it has never evolved. I've been in it. I've been using it for 21 years. There's never been an evolution. No technology has ever tried to challenge that process. And what happens is we create this environment where people just they don't recognize that there are problems with the process because there's never been any other way to do it. Hey, this is the only way we've ever done it. So, hey, this is the only way we can do it. people don't look at these problems as problems. It's the norm, right? They accept it as the norm. And I'm here to challenge that status quo.
Well, and I guess that's why we're having you on our show, because I think that's the definition of innovation. So that's pretty cool. So have you done any beta tests, some preliminary kind of like even maybe without the software tests of this system so far? And what's it look like? How's it going?
Absolutely. So that was my intent with starting Higher Power Consulting, right? I wanted that platform to be the beta test for the offer first process. So for the last 3 years, I've been using a manual version of that process. And using that, I've been able to fill positions which normally take, 3 to 4 months. I've been doing it in weeks. The clients that I've filled positions for have just been provided me some overwhelmingly positive feedback. And they've given me feedback, Shawn, that I didn't even anticipate. Things like the enhancement to the interview process. And let me explain that real quick. So using the offer first process, when we determine that the values align and the candidate is no longer concerned about compensation because they know that you've recognized their value, they go into that interview much more comfortable and natural versus the candidate who goes in without knowing what the offer is going to be. That person is hyper focused on impressing you, right? They may not be asking the questions they really want to ask because they're just so focused on themselves and giving off this positive impression in an effort to get what they believe is going to be a higher offer. But what we've learned is that employers know what they're going to pay you before you walked in the door, plus or minus a small percentage.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, I mean, not to give the trade secrets away, but we've got a lot of corporate consolidators that listen to our podcast. We've got an audience that's wide, and they're probably out there sitting thinking to themselves, well, we can just do this. We can just give them an offer first. What's your edge? Like they could just give them an offer before they get into the negotiation piece.
Yeah, they absolutely can, but they don't. If they were going to do that, they'd have been doing it for years, right? So that's another reason why I filed a patent on that process. So I found an attorney out in Washington, D.C. who specializes in a very niche field of patent law. It's business process patents. I shared all my information with them and, they determined that this was patentable. So that's why we moved forward with it. But at the end of the day, anybody can do that, right? But most aren't, and the reason why is because they apparently don't see the problem with their processes, right? So Offer First is going to help streamline that and make it simpler for them.
That's the issue always with every process. Then you're kind of stumbling upon it, and then you're like, okay, well, this could be done different. But then what you can run into as an issue as an entrepreneur is that if they don't see it in their process and they don't want to change, would they be your clients? Would they really buy into this as a product then? Because you're building a platform around it, right? There's a software product that's being developed. Do you think or anticipate any challenges trying to quote sell it to them if this is based on a different process? What do you think?
I really don't, primarily because if you think about it from this perspective, as a candidate, as a job seeker, would you rather go through the traditional process where you invest significant amounts of your personal time, which we know these veterinary professionals don't have much of, right? Do you want to invest so much of your personal time up front for an unknown outcome? Or would you rather use the Offer First process where you're going to know right up front whether or not your value aligns with the employer? Right. So based on that alone, I can confidently say that the job seekers will choose Offer First. When the job seekers are on Offer First, the employers will come. We know the veterinary industry is nothing more than a war for talent right now. Everybody's looking for a new source.
It's so interesting. We had a guest last week, and we were talking about network effect. And I think that your platform has a built-in opportunity for network effect. If you have all of these veterinarians that are on the platform and it's going well for them, they're going to tell their colleagues. And so that's a really interesting thing that I think will determine the future of your business, which is kind of cool, Paul. Besides getting the software to market, which is always exciting for a non-software engineer that's close to getting a product to market, which it sounds like you're real close. Besides that, what's the most exciting part of the business for you?
The most exciting part of the business for me is going to be the impact that I'll be able to provide for the job seekers and for the small independent private practices that have had traditionally have had a very difficult time competing for talent, right? Not just on the grand scale, but even utilizing services like my previous company, right? The external recruiter, where my fee is 20% of the base pay. So for one hire, these independent practices can be paying 26 up to 30 plus $1,000 per hire. With Offer First, I'm going to level that playing field, and it's priced at a way that even the smallest private practice can afford. And now those folks that have traditionally had a difficult time competing for talent, they're going to be able to get in front of the talent like they've never been before. And what I'm doing is creating an environment where all employers, no matter how big or small, all employers are going to compete for talent based on the quality of their culture and not the size of their budgets.
So, Paul, this is I assume that building software is a new endeavor for you.
Yes.
So, I've been a veterinarian for a number of years, and then I had this idea to improve the process. And then I thought it would be cool to build the software to facilitate that. And then I didn't know what I jumped into. How is that experience for you? What are the challenges? Maybe what are the things that you now learned in this journey that you're on that you could suggest other entrepreneurs when they have an idea on improving something and building software? And how is that journey? And what do you have? Maybe a suggestion to others.
Yeah, this has been one hell of a learning experience. I mean, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. There have been days where I get up and I'm just so motivated to get things done, and then other days where I feel like I just fall into this state of deep depression because, oh, I'm never going to be able to get this done. Nobody's ever going to like this, and the market's not going to respond well. So, just being able to control those emotions and understanding that, hey, you know what? The journey is worth the experience, right? And I've spent 21 years in this industry, and knowing that it's an industry that hasn't evolved and knowing that this process is one that's never been challenged, that's something that excites me, right? Now, from the software development perspective, gosh, there's so many learning experiences, especially around cost and controlling those costs, right? Because you get involved with some development agencies, and I didn't know a lot of the things that I was going to need to make Offer First successful. You rely on those other agencies, those other development type companies to provide that information for you. But you know what? You plan out that initial scope. Next thing you know, you realize that there's other things that's needed. And guess what? That's another invoice. And here's some extra hours, and there's more costs. So there's just so many things that I've learned through this experience, but controlling those costs and really finding a good development partner that's going to help you understand what you don't know, I believe is the most critical aspect.
Yeah, yeah. Knowledge is like a ball. Everything that you know is on the inside of the ball, and everything you don't know is on the outside of the ball. And the bigger your knowledge grows, the bigger your awareness of how little you know grows, which is kind of scary. There's a saying that a buddy of mine that was 94 used to tell me over and over again, and I'm always reminded of that, especially when it comes to software development and technology, because it just gets more complex as you solve things, which is a pain. I got a question for you that it's just curiosity. You started your career in the Marine Corps, and this has actually been a reoccurring theme. We've had many, many people that have similar training that kind of find their way into this industry. How has it helped you specifically with this new endeavor?
Well, my experience in the Marine Corps has helped me not just in this endeavor, but throughout my entire life. I believe that obviously the discipline that it instilled in me enables me to finish what I start, right? And this journey with Offer First has been a very long journey. I mean, we're going on 3+ years now. And it's one of those things where when I told people about it early on, you know what, they just give me the side eye, like, it's never going to happen. You're never going to make it, come true, things like that. But, that discipline, that ability to accomplish missions, right? That's what the Marine Corps' number one goal is, to accomplish the mission. But instilling that in me at a very young age is something that has enabled me to, like I said, finish the things that I start, right? And when I commit to something, I'm going to get it done.
there's a mantra that is a part of the Kanban methodology, which I repeat all the time. It's almost like I want to use it on my email signature. It's stop starting and start finishing.
Yep.
Actually, make sure that and I've been, big projects and small projects, guilty of starting too many things at the same time and starting a new one and another shiny object and then not finishing what you were doing. So, with that, what is the next thing in your roadmap or the vision to finish? What is that next goal, milestone that you're trying to achieve on your road to success?
Right now, Offer First, we're about to start the testing, right? So we're about to get into the testing phase, which is really exciting. That's going to be the last step before we go live. Aside from that, it's a lot of marketing. We're going to start a large marketing campaign to attract the employers and the candidates. And right now, yeah, that's essentially the last two steps for me before we go live. I'm anticipating go live will be sometime in June. So we're all really excited about that. And, like I said, this has just been a dream come true at this point. This is something that I've been thinking about for a very long time.
Paul, that's super awesome. And so by the time this episode gets in front of our listeners, you're going to be real close to June. The question I have for you is, are you looking for people to help you test it? If people are listening to this episode and they're like, oh shit, I'd really like to try that. I'd like to get an advantage when it comes to recruiting in the industry. Are you open to that? And do you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I opened up a early sign up page that can be found at offerfirst.com/early sign up. Those are the folks that have already expressed interest in being early users, and those will be the folks that I communicate with to get volunteers for testing.
Offerfirst.com. How'd you do that? That seems almost too good to be true.
Oh, I bought it for about $1,200. Somebody owned it. They weren't doing anything with it. I made them an offer for, I think it was $1,200, and they sold it to me.
Uh-oh, they're gonna probably regret that.
Oh yeah, that's the truth.
Paul, it's been a pleasure. Always glad to check in with you and see where you're at with this project. It's been exciting. I've seen you in the industry, and your non-compete philosophy really aligns with what we're doing at Galaxy. So I'm very excited to see you progress and see this launch. And we're about to we got to the end of the episode. So there's two questions that we ask all our guests. And number one is their book recommendation, YouTube video, TED Talk, or something that you would like to suggest to our listeners.
So The Go-Giver is a very short read. You could probably read it in a day or two, but it was a book that really influenced the way that I conduct my own personal business, right? So it's about doing things for others, even if it's at a cost to yourself, knowing that that goodwill is going to come back to you, right? And it's also, it teaches you to accept that goodwill when it does come back, because I'm one of those that, I will do anything for others, right? But I generally don't like to ask for help from them. But, this book enables that, or it explains why it's okay to accept that help, right? To accept that support from others that you've been good to in the past. So it's a really influential book. I enjoy reading it. I've read it a couple times.
That's awesome. And Paul, another innovator that you think we should have on the show?
Another innovator, I would say Dr. Keith True. So Dr. Keith True is on a mission to help veterinarians step into the ownership world, right? So he's trying to make that process easier for them. He's somebody that I met at VMX, and I've been in contact with him ever since. Really great guy, awesome personality, incredible sense of humor, but very highly intelligent, just really smart and cares about the industry. And I would love to hear him on this podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.